at Naya Sci-Fi, and I am privileged to talk to Nick Farmer. He is the creator of the Belter language, or more precisely, the Conlang of the Belters in the smash hit The Expanse on the Sci-Fi Network. So again, thank you, Nick, for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start off by saying I wanted to talk about the book, and this will be a two-part interview. We'll talk about the book now, and then we'll talk. I know our fans really want to hear about his work on The Expanse, but I wanted to start off with the book because the book is amazing, and I just want to have the experience to talking to him about it. Okay, so when I was preparing for this interview, I was wondering how I would do a synopsis of your book without giving away too many details. So maybe I can just put the burden on you, and
Sure.
you can just give us a brief synopsis of what the book is about, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So I guess this is also an opportunity to pick up a copy and,
There you go.
and show it off. It's called The Survivors. My name is Nick Farmer, and you can find it on Amazon. So it's speculative fiction, science fiction set in the near future, pretty contemporary. And with all kind of short science fiction, I was trying to address a what if question.
Okay.
And in this particular case, it was, what if the apocalypse happened, and it wasn't so bad, that it wasn't all the things that everybody always expected. It's just dystopian, everything's terrible, it's all dark and gloom, etc. I mean, what if in fact people come out on the other end actually being better in some way?
Right.
And I also wasn't trying to romanticize it in terms of, society is evil and, we need to just go back to our, primitive human stage. No, I mean, this is really just, I was trying to deal with when people are in a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
what's their response? And one of the main inspirations was a book by the journalist Sebastian Junger, and he wrote a book called Tribe.
Okay.
And it's about how, our evolutionary origins are that we're a tribal species, that we enjoy, we're designed to be in small groups, which, everybody's very communally oriented, and there's often a lot of conflict between groups, but within that group, things are very, very tight, and that when you have crises, you see people reverting to that.
Right.
So after
Tribal nature.
exactly, so after 9/11, all of a sudden, a lot of the alienation that people had between, just people in modern society, a lot of that just went away. So things like murder rates actually went down after 9/11, and suicide rates went down too, because mental health improved when people had this feeling of a strong knit community. But it doesn't last.
Right.
But if you had something where it's like the complete breakdown of contemporary society, you really would see a revert to that tribal society, and that's what I was dealing with. And then there's all sorts of other things, so I won't go into too much.
Okay, well, so let's go into the part where a question I wanted to ask you. You go into a lot of complex concepts, genetic modifications, transhuman, this kind of thing. And so I was wondering, were these topics that you thought about all the time during the time of your life, or did you decide, well, one day, I'm going to write a book, and what would be a good book, and let's start picking these topics that might be intriguing?
Well, it's definitely something that I find very interesting. It's something that's been in the news a lot lately, and also it's a reaction for me. Because a lot of people, we're in the Bay Area right now, and we're surrounded by tech. You worked at Google, so you hear everybody talking about artificial intelligence and how AI is the future. And my background is in linguistics and in philosophy, so like cognitive science, and I really have yet to be convinced about the power of AI to be
really?
the
Okay.
future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the human body and brain is a machine far more sophisticated than anything that we can make. Just the things that the brain is capable of doing are, it's different from computers. Like I can't off the top of my head do calculations or sift through massive, spreadsheets of data.
Right.
But at the same time, if someone throws a ball at me, I can catch it. I don't have to calculate all the physics behind the trajectory and the velocity and all that stuff. And if someone's speaking to me in a language that I understand, I don't have to go through all these complex algorithms. I can understand. I mean, we already have so much capability with humans that I think that we can do a lot more by enhancing humans than by trying to replace humans.
Replace humans, yeah. Well, this touches upon something that stuck out to me when I was reading. So, without giving away too much in the book, there's this conflict of people who survived this post-apocalyptic event, and some were more suited to survive than others, and it seemed to be the people who were the I won't say brainiacs. I'll just say the computer programmer, that kind of thing. They didn't seem to have as much relevance, or the person who Daniel, who was the biologist. So yeah.
I mean, it's if all of a sudden you don't have electricity, like all the utilities are out and all the contemporary infrastructure is gone, there's going to be certain people who have skills that are just suited to that kind of society. If your work is with computers and you don't have electricity, I mean, you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
And, if you're a biologist, I mean, there's probably some things that are useful, but if you can't manipulate microscopic objects anymore, then that's you're out of luck there too.
Yeah.
If you're a carpenter or a farmer or a soldier, those are things that are no matter what, those are useful skills.
Right.
And I mean, to sort of make it clear, one of the things that I kind of wanted to do was that the people who end up in this group, the survivors, they're people who don't know each other from all sorts of different backgrounds. I mean, and there's if you were to put them together, there's nothing tying them together pre-apocalypse, and then afterwards, it's just that they are now in this one group, and now you have this other group of people who are sort of unaffected in a certain way, who are it's now that you've got this antagonism going on, and it to a certain degree it was also kind of dealing with so being tribal is this innate thing, and a lot of positive aspects can come out of that, but it also does lead to violence between groups.
Yeah.
And how easy it is just for lines to be drawn. I mean, that there's nothing necessarily innate about any of the lines that we ever draw. It's just whatever happens to be,
You just have to roll with it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not always a positive thing.
Well, as I was telling you earlier before we started the interview that. First of all, I love the book. I thought it was an easy read, and I love that format. So there are two things I want to ask. First of all, why did you decide to do a novelette format? And also, as I mentioned earlier, when I finished the book, I wanted more, and I was thinking this would be a great series. So I'd like to talk to you about that too. So first of all, what about the novelette? Why did you choose that format?
Well, it was partly just a strategic decision because I wanted to have something finished before season 2 of The Expanse was finished airing, so that I could get as much social media attention as possible.
Right.
And that was useful as a deadline, and something shorter helped in that regard. But also my style of writing, I think. It's suited to shorter. I mean, I prefer to be very concise and leave a lot more for the reader to fill in rather than describe every last little detail.
And he was very successful at that too.
So, I mean, I tried to kind of make the main character as much of a blank slate as possible so that anybody could, kind of put themselves in that position. If I gave too many background details, then it would start to become somebody else.
Right.
I mean, of course, he's male, but that's kind of about it.
Yeah.
He's a male biologist. That's really all there is to it. And I think also that I mean, I had the advantage of being with going self-published that I could control every aspect of the book. And novelettes are not things that traditional publishers want to publish. They don't make very much money off of it.
Yeah.
And
I
so
can see that.
it's an underserved sort of format, I think. Like there's almost nothing out there on the market like that. But people like it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's personally inspired me to, maybe I can write something. Yeah.
yeah, I mean there are some stories that are just better suited to that format. And for the second part of your question, I had intended originally to write it as a one-off, just this is a standalone thing. But I've gotten so many people asking, like, what happens next? Like,
Yeah.
I'm so invested, I want to know,
Exactly.
that I have started writing a sequel.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice.
And I'm aiming for a trilogy, and I don't know if I'll constrain myself quite so much to a very short, to like 10,000 words. I mean, maybe I'll go a little bit longer, but I'm not planning on making like a Game of Thrones, 1,000-page long per book epic.
Okay, well, I have so many more questions to ask Nick, but we will continue this interview in part 2, and in part 2 we'll talk more about his work on The Expanse. I'm Belinda with Naya Sci-Fi, and this is Nick Farmer, the creator of the Belter language, or Khan language, for the smash hit on the Sci-Fi Network, The Expanse, and we're really happy to have him here. This is the second part of a two-part interview. On the first part, we talked about his book, The Survivors, and I urge you to look at that interview because that book is amazing, and we'll also be reviewing the book on the site. So right now, for part 2, we're going to focus in on his work on The Expanse. And so you notice that I said Khan language, or Conlang. So can you explain to our fans what that's about?
Sure. I think, if you're interested in sci-fi, then you're probably familiar with a couple. I mean, there's, Klingon is probably the best known example from Star Trek, but then also, with Lord of the Rings, there's Elvish and Orcish, and I mean, Tolkien was kind of the first person really to do constructed languages as an artistic thing, but I mean, there's also been the language in Avatar, and and in Game of Thrones you have Dothraki and Valyrian, and so this is starting to become. I mean, recently there've been more and more examples of constructed languages being used in shows, and a lot of it is because it adds another level of depth to the world, which if you're creating a sort of a large TV show or movie series or whatever, that goes a long ways, especially with your hardcore devoted fans. Right. And I also think for The Expanse, one of the reasons why it's valuable is because it's supposed to be a plausible future reality, something that really could happen in 200 years. And if that's the case, I mean, given the social circumstances, I'm not going to give too much away as a spoiler, but you have people who are living in space stations in the asteroid belt, and they've been drawn from all around the world from different underprivileged groups, and just basically they're economic slaves in outer space. So it's pretty reasonable to imagine that they would end up with their own language, and so when I was approached about it, they were pretty vague with their instructions, but it was one of those situations where the context, like the story, dictated what needed to be done.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of my questions to you, from the video that you did with David Peterson, somehow I got the impression that there might be a community of people in this, and so if that's the case, do you, like, at night just write up a language, or is it more driven by what the writers want you to give them?
So, well, David Peterson, he's in charge of, he's not in charge of, but he's like a leading figure in a community of people who do make instructed languages for fun. I kind of fell into it. I wasn't ever a part of that community. I happened to meet George R.R. Martin, the creator of the book series, like Game of Thrones, that the show's based off of. I met him in a bar, and I just started talking to him, and I didn't want to gush like, oh my god, I'm such a fan. So I tried to think of, okay, what's something that I can say that's sort of useful. And I ended up inviting him to talk at Google. I mean, my mom.
You got him to do that.
Yes, that was me.
Okay.
And so my mom at the time ran this program to bring people to talk, and so he said, sure, I've heard of that, I'd be happy to come. He came, he brought his assistant, who was one half of the guys who wrote The Expanse. That's how I got connected with him, and then he one day said, hey, our book's got optioned for television, would you be interested in, you're a linguist, would you be interested in creating a language for us? And I said, sure. And they were, like I said, they were pretty vague about what they wanted, because they didn't know what they wanted. They just, nobody, if you're not a linguist, it's hard to imagine, well, how do you even create a language? So they can't give direction. I mean, they're not used to working with linguists in the way that maybe one would be used to working with, say, people making sets, So they don't know what they want. And they would say things like, well, we want a language that's completely different from English, but can be understood by an English speaker. And, well, those are two mutually exclusive things. So it took a little while for us to kind of settle into how things were exactly going to go. But I was given fairly free reign to do what I wanted, and luckily they liked the final product.
Right. Yeah. No, even before I knew you were the author of that language, I always felt, because I'm a big fan of The Expanse, and and it was something, as I think you gave them what they were looking for, because there were some elements that I could sort of understand or seem similar, but just enough to make it know it's not of this world, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it is a sort of a daughter language of English. It's kind of, I mean, the thought experiment would be, what would happen to English if it was taken into space and then creolized by these particular groups of people.
I was about to use the word Creole. It seems like, okay, yeah.
So it is a Creole, and I spent a lot of time studying Creoles, and I worked with an MIT professor of linguistics who is a Creolist, Michel de Graaf, and he's Haitian, and so a lot of the grammar is inspired by Haitian Creole. The interesting thing about Creoles is a lot of them have some particular elements that are common across Creoles around the world, and so that was nice for me, because then I could bring those into Belter and just sort of right away get that level of plausibility.
So as season 3 approaches, have you started writing or giving them anything for the next season?
Not so well, I mean, sort of going behind the scenes. I'm involved in pre-production, but I'm on like the later side of pre-production.
Okay.
So how it works is the writers write their episodes, and then I get the scripts. I go through. I know kind of which characters are people who would speak this language and and then I find the sections where I think, okay, here it would be appropriate to use the language.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Or other times they'll ask, because they'll have in mind that they want this particular, dialogue to be, either in part Belter or pure Belter, and so I will then translate those sections.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of it that way, part Belter, yeah. Okay.
Well, that's another thing that it was kind of a happy coincidence that Creole works really well for what they wanted, because all Creole languages kind of stand in a particular relationship with their mother language. So, for example, with Haitian Creole, you'll have a situation where someone is bilingual. They'll speak both Haitian and French, and say they're hanging out with their childhood friends, just grabbing some drinks. You'll hear like pure, deep Haitian Creole, and then they're interacting with their coworkers, and now it's going to be Creole with more elements of French. but then like they they're a job interview or
Some
they're in
formal
front of the
setting, yeah.
judge, and so then they're going to be speaking French, but
Yeah,
probably they'll
makes
have
sense.
a Haitian accent, and you'll see this, with a lot of different situations. I mean, even Jamaican is another example that like people English speakers are kind of familiar with, where you get the Jamaican accent with some Jamaican words, but that's not Jamaican Creole. Like real Jamaican Creole is a different language that an English speaker is not going to understand. And the nice thing is for the show, it means that sometimes it's that deep, belter Creole. Other times it's English with some belter words, so that the audience doesn't need subtitles, but it gives that feeling. It's not used exactly in the kind of way like that it would be if you'll have two characters who are belters who are talking to each other, and in the show they'll be speaking English but with a belter accent. In real life they would be speaking belter, but they didn't want to have subtitles, so that limited the amount of the language. But I think they do a good job of sort of hinting at the fact that there is actually this complete system, which is not entirely expressed in the show because it's a full language. It's hard to pick that all up in just a TV show, but
Exactly.
knowing that it's there, it adds a lot.
Will you ever like release it as a book, like the Belter language or something of that nature? Has anybody mentioned that?
There's been a lot of desire from fans, a lot of people asking for that. I would like to do it. It's out of my hands because I don't own all the rights. I mean, when you produce something for television, they own the rights because otherwise it'd be this legal battle. I mean, any time that I wanted, I could say, you know what, I don't want to lease it to you anymore. You can't play this show. You can't air this anymore. And they can't have that.
Right.
So everything that's in the show, they have to own the rights to.
Okay, well, let's conclude by what I want to ask you. If someone's interested in constructive language, how would they get into it?
Well, I would say the best thing you could do is study linguistics.
Okay.
I mean, there's kind of no way around it that you have to understand language, and the study of language is linguistics, and I could suggest the introductory textbook, which I have been involved in.
Yeah, and I think it would be excellent. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I have I contributed 3 chapters, and actually we're working on a separate online section which will be about constructed languages in particular.
Wow.
So
okay,
this will be
let's tell us about this.
It's being published by MIT Press. It's an introductory, college level textbook, but which is written, like anybody can just pick it up and teach themselves. And so this will be the first time that constructed languages will be featured in an academic introductory linguistics text.
Oh, that is fabulous.
So, I mean, the book is, it's just called Linguistics. It's published by MIT Press. I mean, my mom is the main author, Ann Farmer. It's not too hard to find. If you want to link it in the video, you can absolutely do so.
Yeah, it's a great book. My daughter used that book when she was studying Japanese, and it was very helpful to her.
Yeah, because all the concepts that you would need to know to make something are, described in there. So.
Okay. All right, then. Well, thank you very much, Nick. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, this is part 2 of a 2-part interview with Nick Farmer, the author of The Survivors and also the creator of the Belter language in the sci-fi thriller The Expanse. Thanks a lot.